Hello everyone, Disha here. Let's continue from where we left last time. Coming to the 23rd shlok from the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We are going to complete the entire first chapter in this video. So, this is the third video on Bhagavad Gita. So, let's begin. So, coming to the 23rd shlok, which says, "Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra." Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. It was an open secret that Duryodhan wanted to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans, in collaboration with his father Dhritarashtra. Therefore, all persons who had joined the side of Duryodhan must have been birds of the same feather. Arjun has spoken this shlok. So Arjun wanted to see them on the battlefield before the fight was begun, just to learn who they were, but he had no intention of proposing peace negotiations with them. It was also a fact that he wanted to see them to make an estimate of the strength which he had to face, although he was quite confident of victory because Krishna was sitting by his side. Now coming to the 24th shlok. In this shlok, Sanjaya said, "O descendant of Bharat, having thus been addressed by Arjun, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties." Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. In this verse, Arjun is referred to as Gudakesa. Gudaka means sleep, and one who conquers sleep is called Gudakesa. Sleep also means ignorance. So Arjun conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because this is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes. Thus a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness or Samadhi. As Harsikesa, or the director of the senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjun's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. Thus he did so and spoke as follows. Now coming to the 25th shlok of the Bhagavad Gita, of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, this goes, "In the presence of Bhisma, Drona and all other chieftains of the world, Lord Krishna said, 'Just behold Partha, all the Kurus assembled here.'" So Lord Krishna is referring here to Arjun. He said this to Arjun, that just behold Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. As the super soul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the minds of Arjun. The use of the word Harsikesa in this connection indicates that he knew everything. And the word Partha, or the son of Kunti or Pratha, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjun. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjun that because Arjun was the son of Partha, the sister of his own father Vasudev, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjun. Now what did Krishna mean when he told Arjun to behold the Kurus? Did Arjun wanted to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Partha. The mind of Arjun was thus predicted by the Lord in friendly joking. Now coming to the 26th shlok of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. There Arjun could see within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. On the battlefield, Arjun could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bhurisrava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhisma and Somdat, teachers like Dronacharya and Kirpacharya, maternal uncles like Salya and Sakuni, brothers like Duryodhan, sons like Lakshman, friends like Ashtvatham, well-wishers like Kartavaram. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. Now coming to the 27th shlok, which says, when the son of Kunti, Arjun, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. So in the 28th shlok, Arjun spoke. He said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods. Whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in the material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjun, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as the soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjun, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjun. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjun's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjun were not due to weakness, but due to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, one who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods, but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Now coming to the 29th shlok, which says, Arjun speaks in this shlok, saying, my whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow Gandhiva is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. There are two kinds of trembling of the body and two kinds of standing of the hair on end. Such phenomena occur either in great spiritual ecstasy or out of great fear under material conditions. There is no fear in transcendental realization. Arjun's symptoms in this situation are out of material fear, namely loss of life. This is evident from other symptoms also. He became so impatient that his famous bow Gandhiva was slipping from his hands. And because his heart was burning within him, he was feeling a burning sensation of the skin. All these are due to material conception of life. Now coming to the 30th shlok of the Bhagavad Gita, from the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In this shlok, Arjun says, I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Kesi demon. Due to his impatience, Arjun was unable to stay on the battlefield and he was forgetting himself on account of this weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in such a bewildering condition of existence. Bhem. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium takes place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjun envisioned only painful reverses in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjun is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. One's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjun thought that his victory in the battle would only be cause of lamentation for him. Now coming to the 31st shlok. In this shlok, Arjun again speaks, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom or happiness. Without knowing, now coming to the explanation of this shlok, that without knowing that one's self-interest is in Vishnu or Krishna, conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships hoping to be happy in such situations. In such a blind conception of life, they forget even the cause of material happiness. Arjun appears to have even forgotten the moral codes for a Kshatriya. It is said that two kinds of men, namely the Kshatriya who dies directly in front of the battlefield under Krishna's personal orders, and the person in the renounced order of life who is absolutely devoted to spiritual culture, are eligible to enter into the sun glow, which is so powerful and dazzling. Arjun is reluctant even to kill his enemies, let alone his relatives. He thinks that by killing his kinsmen, there would be no happiness in his life, and therefore he is not willing to fight. Just as a person who does not feel hunger is not inclined to cook. He has now decided to go into the forest and live a secluded life in frustration. But as a Kshatriya, he requires a kingdom for his subsistence because the Kshatriyas cannot engage themselves in any other occupation. But Arjun has no kingdom. Arjun's sole opportunity for gaining a kingdom lies in fighting with his cousins and brothers and reclaiming the kingdom inherited from his father, which he does not like to do. Therefore, he considers himself fit to go to the forest to live a secluded life of frustration. Now coming to the 32nd, 33rd, 34th and 35th shlok. In this shlok, Arjun continues, O Govind, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, father-in-laws, grandsons, brothers-in-laws, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will I derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? Arjun had addressed Lord Krishna as Govind because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for cows and the senses. By using these significant words, Arjun indicates that Krishna should understand what will satisfy Arjun's senses. But Govind is not meant for satisfying our senses. Govind is Krishna. Krishna is not meant for satisfying our senses. If we satisfy the senses of Govind, that is Krishna, however, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy their senses and they want God to be the order supplier for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. But when one takes the opposite way, namely when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govind without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govind or Krishna, all desires of the living entity are satisfied. Arjun's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjun fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on the battlefield and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life, however, is different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. Arjun did not want to kill his relatives, and if there was any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming into the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in the following chapters. As a non-devotee of the Lord, Arjun did not like to retaliate against his miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore, the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjun wanted to excuse them. Now coming to the 36th shlok. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Arjun is speaking in this shlok that sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune, and how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. Arjun was not an ordinary person. He was saintly by character and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a Kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of the state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Ram was so saintly that people even now are anxious to live in the kingdom of Lord Ram, in the Ram Rajya. But Lord Ram never showed any cowardice. Ravan was an aggressor against Ram because Ravan kidnapped Ram's wife Sita, but Lord Ram gave him sufficient lessons unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjun's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjun thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjun considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not therefore consider such killing profitable simply for the matter of temporary body happiness. After all, kingdoms and pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent, so why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjun, addressing of Krishna as Madhav, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that, as the husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not induce Arjun to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. Now continuing with the 37th and 38th shlok. So Arjun continues talking to Krishna and he says, O Janardhan, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? So Arjun is putting this question to Krishna in this shlok. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. A Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such an obligation, Arjun could not refuse to fight because he had been challenged by the party of Duryodhan. In this connection, Arjun considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjun, however, could not see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjun decided not to fight. Now coming to the next shlok, which says, with the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. There are many principles of religious traditions to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. This is the explanation of the shlok. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death, but on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. Therefore, for no purpose should the elder members of the family be slain. Now coming to the next shlok, which says, an increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. So Arjun is continuously putting his arguments in front of Lord Krishna to why he should not fight in this battle, and he is explaining them through these shloks, which says that the elder members of the family should not be killed, and he is telling Krishna what he feels from his side regarding not entering the battle. So now coming, I'm going to repeat this shlok one more time. This is the 41st shlok, which says, an increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. According to the rules and regulations of fruitive activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu or Krishna, because eating the remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kind of sinful reactions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, when remnants of prasadam, food, are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kind of misery. It is stated in the Gita that anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukund, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now coming to the next shlok, which says, by the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. Again in this shlok, Arjun is putting his argument in front of Krishna. He says the breaking of the tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society, and consequently people forget the aim of life, which is Krishna or Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos. In the 43rd shlok, Arjun continues. He says, O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplinic succession that those whose family tradition are destroyed dwell always in hell. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. Arjun bases his argument not on his own personal experience but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who is already established in that knowledge. There is a system by which before death one has to undergo the process of atonement for his sinful activities. One who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of atonement called prashchit. Without doing so, one surely will be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as a result of sinful activities. Now coming to the 44th shlok of the first chapter. Again, Arjun continues to say to Krishna in this shlok, he says, Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Now coming to the explanation of this shlok. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjun, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Now coming to the 45th shlok, which says, Arjun continues, Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Now coming to the explanation of the shlok. It is the custom according to Kshatriya fighting principles that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjun, however, decided that even if attacked by the enemy in such an awkward position, he would not fight. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. Now coming to the 46th shlok of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is the last shlok in this first chapter, which is observing the armies. So in this shlok, Sanjaya said, who was narrating this entire episode to Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya said, Arjun, thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Now coming to the explanation of the shlok. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjun stood up on his chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. So thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. With this we complete the first chapter, which is observing the armies, with all the shloks, and we are going to continue with the second chapter in the next video. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see all of you in the next video.